flower that, you were hoping for a silent sermon today, but it will be a short one though, because we really used some time. So, but that's good. Always just enough perfect time. So I'm going to start with an affirmation. I invite you to affirm after me. Divine understanding is my spiritual nature.
Divine understanding is my spiritual nature.
With spiritual insight, I see beyond appearances.
I see beyond appearances.
The divine nature of myself and others.
The divine nature of myself and others.
Understanding oneness.
Understanding oneness.
I act in ways that foster unity.
I act in ways that foster unity.
So I think we all know what the human condition is, right? And that's all about intellectual knowledge and understanding. And that is a very valuable thing that we don't want to throw out bathwater or whatever. We need that human, that intellectual understanding to function in our world. But the spiritual solution is to not limit ourselves to intellectual understanding alone, but rather to deepen and have spiritual understanding. So intellectual understanding is of the relative world. If you study metaphysics at all, you know there's the relative world, which we're all living in, and then there's the absolute truth, relative truth and the absolute truth. And so spiritual understanding is about the absolute truth. And it is in the absolute realm of knowing. So that's why Jesus was able to see beyond appearances, because he was able to see beyond the relative truth with a little t to the spiritual and have spiritual understanding and see to the absolute truth of people's wholeness. And so when he would call people forth into health, he was calling them from the absolute condition they might be experiencing and allowing the divine essence of who they were to work through that and express in the world. So that's what today's all about. Today is about deepening our spiritual understanding. In order to deepen our spiritual understanding, we kind of have to know what spiritual understanding is. Okay, so that's why I'm up here talking. But the work is for all of us to do, not just me. So why do you think it might be helpful in your life to develop spiritual understanding? Anybody got any idea of why that might be helpful or how it might be helpful in your life?
To get through the hard times?
Get through the hard times. Oh, that was you. Okay. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Yeah, to get through the hard times.
Less worrying.
What?
Less worrying.
Less worrying. Yeah, I think Jesus said, do not worry. So many times in the gospel, do not worry, do not worry. Consider the lilies of the field. Do not worry. Yes.
For divine action.
Divine action. In other words, by having spiritual understanding, we can then act from that.
Be closer to God.
To be closer to God, to our divine essence, our divine nature. To not just count on our humanity, but to really tap into our divinity and have that close connection and have it reflected in the world. To know our truth. And that truth, the most important truth that we are to know in order to have spiritual understanding is oneness. Our individual oneness, and that we're one with all. And I think it was Joel Goldsmith said, really grammatically we should say, we is one. Instead of we are one. But our language gets in the way a lot of times. Our dualistic language gets in the way of non-duality. So we just cope with that. There was a couple other reasons that I thought were significant. And I'm going to apparently have to read this book. It's called God Will See You Through by Minister Mary Cooperly. And there were several quotes that I found from that book. She said, spiritual understanding can settle any argument in quietness and harmony. It can meet any hardness of thought and melt it into peace. It can fuse any group of disunited people into amazing oneness of purpose. So that's a pretty good reason, right? She also said, the more you understand yourself and the power of God within you, the more peace, wisdom, love, and joy. Gosh, you know, I always say peace, wisdom, love, and joy. Somebody wrote it in that order. I love it. The more peace, wisdom, love, and joy you are able to express constructively, positively toward others. And then she said, as a child of God, you can understand what you need to understand. You can know what you should know. And you can find the answers to any question arising within your mind and heart regarding anyone or anything. So I think spiritual understanding is pretty significant. And then there was somebody named Bruce Gilbert that said, the time of the end of the world is the time when you come into full understanding of who you are as a child of God. Our oneness, our divinity. That's the end of the world, okay, in a positive sense. It's the end of us being, Jesus said, be in the world but not of it. And so spiritual understanding can take us to the end of this world that we have allowed to make us so, maybe unhappy or cause us so much stress or distress or whatever. This could be the end of the world, of that world, so that we have an understanding and appreciation for the more joyful aspects of life. So there's two aspects of understanding. There's the intellectual understanding and the spiritual understanding that I mentioned earlier. And again, nothing wrong with intellectual understanding. We need to have intellectual understanding to function in the world, but we want to take it deeper. And the best way that I know to go from intellectual understanding to spiritual understanding is through the techniques of heart math. How many of you are familiar with heart math? Yes, many of you. The rest of you, I'll have to do a session, but I'll give you a little taste of it today. And so heart math is about realizing that in our intellect, in this frontal lobe area, we try to figure things out. There's a lot of effort involved. There's a lot of reasoning and all of that. And a lot of times that reasoning isn't as rational as we might think it'd be, because there's something the Buddhists call the monkey mind. So the monkey mind is usually into fear, lack, and limitation. And it swings from vine to vine, picking, in a state of fear, anxiety, and that sort of thing. So in the Institute of Heart Math, which is a scientific organization, they have studied the difference between being in our head, in our intellect, versus being in our heart. And there's like 40,000 neurons in the heart that we can tap into in order to have in my way of saying it, in order to have spiritual understanding. So I just want to invite you to take a moment, and you can scribble on, a purse slip or something, to just take a moment to bring to mind something stressful in your life. And don't pick the most stressful event of your childhood. Just pick something, on your way to services today, or something that happened in the past week that was stressful. Okay? And then just jot down, or recall it in memory, 3 to 5 thoughts and feelings that you had at the time or still have about that situation. And while you're still in that state of mind, if someone asked you, what's the character of that thought? You know, what's the characteristics of it? Is it a happy thought, an anxious thought, a fearful thought, a loving thought? What kind of thoughts were you thinking? Or did you jot down? Just be aware of that. One word that would characterize the nature of your thoughts. And now, I want you to imagine that you have a remote control with a pause button. And you're going to hit the pause button and stop the thinking. Okay? Just stop it, as Bob Newhart says. Stop it. If you've never seen the YouTube Bob Newhart Stop It, watch it tonight. Okay? And then bring your attention down to the physical heart. If it helps, you can put your hand in the area of your heart. And just begin imagining that you're breathing as if through the heart for 3 or 4 breaths at your own pace. And then while you're still breathing as if you're breathing through the heart, with your attention focused in the heart, recall a time that you felt great. You were either grateful, appreciative, compassionate, feeling on top of the world, whatever. Just one instance that gives you that feeling tone of what you were experiencing in that joyful moment. And breathe that into the heart. Just breathe that feeling nature into the heart. And keeping your attention in the heart, feeling that wonderful, rejuvenating feeling, ask the wisdom of your heart, the understanding heart, what would be a more effective way to deal with the stressor that you identified before? What would be a more effective way that wouldn't be stressful? And just let a few things come to mind and to heart rather than from the heart. And again, characterize those thoughts. How would you characterize those thoughts? Now bring your attention back to the room. So, which thoughts felt better? The first thoughts or the second thoughts? Anybody say the first thoughts felt better? I see no hands. How about the second thought? Okay, because that was from your heart. That was from the neurons in your heart that were connected with your divine nature. It's called heart coherence. And if you saw it, it would look like a really smooth rhythm. If you have heart, I have heart math devices where you can see this. And the thoughts that you had in the beginning look more like static on a radio. Okay, they're real jagged. Okay, so just call out some of the first set of words. How would you characterize your thoughts?
Fear.
Fear?
Emotional.
Emotional?
Anxious.
Anxiety.
Hurt feelings.
What?
Hurt feelings.
Hurt feelings.
Frustration.
Frustration. Now, do those sound rational, logical, whatever? And yet we value the intellect. We so value the intellect. And it's really just giving us that anxiety and fear and stuff. Emotional feelings. Okay, so now, what are some of the, how would you characterize the second set of thoughts from your heart? Kind,
Understanding.
loving,
Calming.
Compassionate.
compassionate,
Peaceful.
peaceful, hopeful,
Acceptance.
accepted,
Trusting.
purposeful, and understanding of things. So, don't you think it would be a lot more effective to make decisions in life from our heart instead of from our head? I mean, we have to use the intellect to go through the steps, right? We have to use the intellect. We don't throw it out, but we don't rely on it alone. We allow it, our intellect, to slow down so that we can move into the heart and ask for spiritual understanding of the situation. And so this, I say, and I've said this many times over the 24 years that I have been a minister, is one of the most valuable tools I've learned in ministry. Is heart math. And when I first learned it, I'd have to do it after the fact. You know? I'd go home and think about what happened, and then I'd do the process. And I needed to write it out. Some people don't. But it is an incredibly valuable tool. And you can use it in meditation, because basically in meditation you're going into the heart. You're becoming silent, and you're focusing on the heart, getting yourself in alignment with your divine nature. You can do it before you go into an important meeting or an event or something like that. You can tap into and ask to be given spiritual understanding about a given situation. So I just want to read you something that I wrote. I've been in a writing group, and we have prompts. And you're given a prompt, and then you write for 10 minutes. And this is what I wrote about spiritual understanding. I started with the first affirmation on your handout. My old beliefs are from the relative realm, shaped by my intellect, the intellect of others, and by my human experience. So that was my prompt. And then I wrote, I acknowledge these old beliefs one by one and give them to spiritual understanding to work its mighty alchemy. In the process, they are transformed into new beliefs based on divine ideas. In truly understanding this, I know without a doubt that I and others are made in the image and likeness of the divine essence that is our true nature. As I travel from my head and my intellectual knowledge, I enter my heart and the realm of pure knowing and understanding. I see the situation and my beliefs about it with new eyes. Pure divine eyes, pure divine ideas, laser through the faults, to that pot of gold. I loved it. It was a pot of gold that is the light of perfect understanding. And I allow that light to illumine me, to illumine the situation, the belief, and any other people involved. Spiritual understanding is the divine nectar that quenches my desire to know that I know that I know. And in that knowing, there is no need to convince my intellect or the intellect of others. And from that pure knowing, I speak and act in alignment with spiritual understanding. So I celebrate that with this deeper understanding of spiritual understanding, that we are willing to tap into that spiritual understanding in the very practical events of life. And that to the extent we do, we are blessed beyond measure. And let's begin doing that right now in a sacred time of shared prayer. And so I invite you to go back to that sacred place in the heart, letting that golden light from the frontal lobe travel down to the heart. And starting with the level of questioning, silently repeat after me these positive, powerful, affirmative thoughts to develop your spiritual faculty of understanding. So at the first level of questioning, I am willing to question old beliefs to satisfy my desire for spiritual understanding. At the next level, I consciously take hold of spiritual concepts. At the third level, I meditate on the spiritual truths I know. At the fourth level, my mind is quickened by new revelations of spirit. At the next level, the sixth level, I see, feel, and understand all things in the light of spirit. And at the deepest level, the light of perfect understanding illumines my life. And silently repeat these words as well. I am the spiritual power of understanding, listening to my life and making meaningful connections between my experiences, thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. I comprehend my divine nature and I move into stillness and silence. As I arise from the silence, I affirm, I am open and receptive to flashes of awareness as I move about my day. And I silently say, thank you, divine nature that I am, for the spiritual power of understanding, the energy of my divine nature that enables me to know that I know that I know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That it is so, and so it is, and so I am. Amen.